You know what managed to go higher today despite really incredible hideous action we saw? Eli Lilly, LLY, the big pharmaceutical company with a stock that's been a huge winner this year, even as it's come down from its highs in the past few weeks. Today, though, Eli Lilly held its investor meeting, and the company gave you a very bullish forecast for 2019. It doesn't hurt that this is exactly the kind of stock that works during a Fed-mandated slowdown, including the dividend boost that Lilly gave you. Now, this morning, we got a chance to speak with David Ricks. He is the chairman and CEO of Eli Lilly, a company you know I like very much. We were at the New York Stock Exchange this morning. Take a look. It was a big day. Big day because not only have you given us a pipeline and an outlook that is far better than expected, but I think people are going to love the fact that you boosted the dividend a lot.
Yeah, it's an exciting day for us. We're announcing it's our Capital Markets Day. We announced an increase in the dividend, 15%, really our biggest increase in a long time, and that reflects our confidence in the growth of the company ahead. And we updated guidance and put out guidance for next year, which is, despite the Cialis patent expiration, growing the top line.
I'm glad you mentioned. Yeah. See, one of the things I like about Lilly is you put the headwind out immediately.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to talk about the tailwinds. I see things going on. Migraine,
yes.
RA, obviously diabetes, cancer. These are things that are extraordinary. Can you point out some of the things that will be real step functions that will make it so that while Lilly is growing well, can grow even faster?
Absolutely. Well, this is a great time to invest in science, and that's our business. We've launched 10 new medicines in the last 5 years. We expect 10 more in the next 5 years. And you touched on some of the key categories, starting with diabetes, our biggest business. Really the key driver, a product called Trulicity, which helps patients control their glucose and lose weight. And despite some competitors coming, we've continued to grow share, and the category is growing dramatically, 20+%. That's a key driver for us and helping millions of patients. In immunology, we have two key products. One, Taltz, which is for psoriasis, which is off to a great start. It should exceed over $1 billion next year, according to street estimates. And Olumiant for RA, which just launched in the U.S. and last year in Europe. The U.S., the label, we had some trouble with the FDA. In Europe, we have the full label, really off to a great start, one of our strongest performers.
Let me stop you for 1 second because I want to continue. But standard of care right now is a drug called methotrexate. It's been the same one for about 50 years. And people aren't that happy with it. There are many people clamoring for the same dosage that they have in Europe to get off of metho and really change people's lives dramatically. How long do you think it would take if you have really good data out of Europe that we might be able to get that drug's dose bumped here?
It's difficult to speculate on the timeline because we need the Food and Drug Administration to agree with us. I think we've been consistent through time that the totality of the data supports both 2 and 4 milligram approved in the U.S. That's not the state today. Only 2 milligram is for use by doctors and patients. But we're in conversations with the FDA. We'll continue to create more data to make our case to have the higher dose available for RA patients as well, because in some types of that disease, it was shown to be more effective.
Yes, and what I want people to know is that a 4 meg conceivably could be the biggest drug. It's my terms.
Right.
You're not a hype artist. I know you're from Lilly.
Yeah.
This could be a gigantic drug, much bigger than people realize.
We're optimistic about it, and I think in the long term we'll win that argument. There's also new indications for Olumiant coming. We expect some data in the first part of 2019 for a condition called atopic dermatitis. This is an itchy skin condition where there's been some new breakthroughs. It's very common, otherwise known as eczema, and we're looking forward to that data too.
Regeneron's got it. I think it's a giant drug.
Yeah.
We got to talk about your migraine drug. And the reason why I talk about it is because it's terrific, but Amgen got out there first with Aimovig. Teva's already out there.
Yes.
What is the superior profile you have, or is it just a me-too product? Because otherwise I think doctors are going to say, wait a second, Aimovig is being tolerated. We're not going to switch over to Lilly's drug.
Right. Well, just to step back, these 3 drugs, they work in similar ways. That's true. But we've had decades where there's been nothing new for migraine. 30 million Americans suffer from migraine. About half of those have what we call moderate to severe, which these drugs are indicated for. And our drug cuts the number of migraines per month roughly in half. Right. If you have what's called moderate migraines, in our study you had 9 a month. Can you imagine? 9 out of 30 days of migraine. And that number could go in half. Some patients had complete migraine-free months, which is dramatic. So these drugs are changing the lives of a lot of women, middle-aged women in the middle of their life. So it's an exciting time for migraine treatment. How will we win? We're 3 or 4 months behind Amgen, 1 month behind Teva. It's a horse race between 3 great companies. But we have some skills that we think will come into play. We're good at reaching consumers. We built that capability around Cialis, which we just mentioned.
And you're much better, frankly, than the other two.
Yeah,
I know.
And it's been something more about our core business than the other two. We also think we have the best delivery system. The same device we use with Trulicity, which has really been a winner for us in diabetes, we're using for these migraine patients. This is a primary care condition. You want an easy-to-use device.
Right.
Patients can give themselves at home. That's what we have.
Okay, that's, I think the 30 million people says it. And if one doesn't
size
work
of
for
the
another, they'll give it for another one.
As
Diabetes and that may be, well, an NRA. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about Lilly.
Markets.
There was a few years ago where people said, look, it's this failing diabetes franchise. How did you energize things?
Yes.
I mean, I know that you can't take credit for all this stuff, but I think that you have created a growth stock out of something that people just say, oh, well, that's a good, stable company.
Well, 10 years ago, I think we had really lost our way in diabetes and overinvested in other areas, but the core of the company has been serving patients with diabetes almost 100 years. My predecessor, John Lechleiter, made a decision to invest in that. Enrique Quintero runs that business for us that entire time. He deserves credit for that turnaround. It's a combination of investing in the science, the right science, and our recent data on tirzepatide, which we just put into phase 3 studies, could be a breakthrough for type 2 diabetes, is an example of that. We've invested in better solutions for patients, delivery systems, connected delivery systems using the power of digital technology to enhance their experience. That's coming next year, as well as just execution on the ground, communicating better with patients and doctors, running a good organization with our payers so that we have the right access for the products. All that comes together with a great performance. Diabetes up more than 30% last year in the U.S.
Accelerated from beginning to end to market. You're talking about making it faster to be able to get a drug to market than anybody else.
Exactly. So this has been a program we've been under for about 5 years. We did some benchmarking at that time and said, we're one of the slower companies. We have to be fast. Patients are waiting for new medicines, and it drives tremendous value for our stakeholders if we can move more quickly. And we've undertaken a pretty successful program to go from roughly 10 years from first human dose to market to something like 7. And we think we're among the best. We're not stopping there. Our end goal is to get to as short as 5, which is cutting in half the time to market. I think every patient wants that.
Do you think the regulators understand how much money is lost before a drug comes to market, and how many years you have to just put in of hard work before it can reach fruition?
I think regulators do. I'm not sure our critics in the payer community or in the pricing debate understand that. It's a risky business, enormous amount of capital, about $1.5 billion per drug, and there's a high failure rate. So you have to be on your game to run this successfully and produce new medicines for patients, which we know everybody wants. It's a complicated business, though.
One last thing. One of my absolute favorite companies is a company called Oleco, which didn't exist that long ago. I saw what some other companies that are in that business ended up being worth. Oleco, I know you want to capitalize on it. I know you want to sell eventually the 80%.
Yes.
But we also know that it's an unbelievable company. Can you scale out of it, or is it just better to try to raise that money now?
Well, we've said we expect to spin out the 80% ownership we retained, and that's a normal thing to do in the IPO process.
It's so good.
Well,
so when is Pfizer going to make so much more money?
It's a great business. The fundamentals are amazing in animal health, both on food and pets. But it's not as similar as you may think to human pharma. So I believe in the power of focus. So does Jeff Simmons, now the CEO of Elanco. And we think we'll retain relationships on technology transfer and other things, but we'll be better to focus on our individual missions, which are distinct, humans and animals, as a separate companies, and can create some value for shareholders.
Well, you have the diabetes franchise, best in class. What you guys are doing for RA, best in class. What you're doing with cancer, just amazing. And it's just, well, look, congratulations.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for all the things you do for shareholders, because you are one of the most remarkably pro-shareholder companies I have ever seen. Dave Ricks, Chairman, CEO of Eli Lilly. Booyah! Jim Cramer here from Mad Money. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube. Click here to subscribe and get the jump on my exclusives with CEOs, plus market news, investing advice, and a whole lot more.